How's everyone doing? Today I'll be doing a video on the top 10 horror movies of the 2010s. In the 2010s was a very strong decade for horror. This will be 10 years, 2010 to 2019. And as always with all top lists, this is subjective, so definitely let me know what you think of my list. And let me know what your favorite movie is from my list of the top 10 horror movies of the 2010s. And let me know what movies would be on your list for the top 10 horror movies of the 2010s. Leave me those comments down below. But now let's go ahead and get into it. The top 10 horror movies of the 2010s from 2010 to 2019. And first up in the number 10 spot is 2013's The Evil Dead remake, directed by Fede Alvarez, who also directed Don't Breathe, which is another masterpiece of horror in my opinion. The Evil Dead remake just turned out to be so much better than I initially expected. Gritty, dirty, raw. The gore effects were amazing. I love the initial concept of why they were all in the cabin in the woods. I thought that was a really unique and modern idea, especially with everything going on in the social climate today. So I thought that was really well done, as well as the cinematography. That really stood out, and I think that was really important for this film. And again, so gritty, so nasty, so bloody, and just some amazing scenes in here. All the actors did a phenomenal job. This is an amazing horror remake, and it definitely had to be on the list for the top 10 horror movies of the 2010s. And next up at the number 9 spot from 2012 is another horror remake, Maniac. And this really surprised the heck out of me because when I heard the initial casting of Elijah Wood, I just wasn't sure how that was going to work, and he really pulled it off. Really good modern take on this one. I actually prefer this over the original Maniac. The original Maniac is really scummy and sleazy and dirty, and this one has that too, but it's more stylized and modernized, with Elijah Wood's character being kind of a weird loner, essentially. And the gore effects here are phenomenal. I really love the look to this film too. All the grays and blacks, the washed out hue really reflects the bleak tone, and the score is amazing. Just again, another good production right here, involving Alexander Aja and Frank Calhoun. I love when they work together. And again, really impressed with Elijah Wood. He really drove this performance. And I love the POV shots too. A good mixture of psychological horror and gore, and just pulled off so superbly. And another great horror remake at the number 9 spot in the top horror movies of the 2010s. Next up at the number 8 spot from 2015 is The Witch. This was set in New England in the 1630s. Just a really haunting movie. Another one that has a really washed out hue, lots of grays and blacks, which again reflects the bleak tone, very atmospheric. This is dramatically paced though, so it might not be for everybody in that regard. This is more about the atmosphere, the build up. It is a slow build. The culmination is just really unsettling all throughout though. And I love the ending to it, and they really went all out for the authenticity of it. It definitely feels like you're set in that time. I love period pieces, especially mixed with horror. But again, it's very haunting, and the woods itself is just kind of creepy. It's like a character unto itself. And then Black Phillip right there. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Absolutely love this one. Just oozing with atmosphere. Next up at the number 7 spot from 2014 is It Follows, a really unique horror movie. Supernatural slasher, but also really an STD slasher. Basically about this girl who is haunted by this supernatural force after she has this sexual encounter. It's just a really unique take on the horror genre. It's something that I haven't ever seen before. The score here is amazing. The whole cast, Maika Monroe, really love her in the lead here. And just her and her friends trying to outwit this supernatural force. I love the swimming pool scene. It is a reminiscent of old school Carpenter in certain regards. It's a very intelligent horror movie, and very well done. Something that really stands out, and something that I haven't seen before from a horror movie. And it's directed by David Robert Mitchell, who also directed Under the Silver Lake, which is another really phenomenal movie. Not a horror movie, but it does have some really bizarre, creepy moments in it too. Just a really good mystery movie, and it shows that he can do mystery very well here. The mystery elements mixed with the horror elements really shine. It has some really creepy moments in here too. Another one that I feel is very haunting, and just a great mixture of the cinematography, the score, the writing, the directing, the acting, and just an inventive idea overall. And on my number 6 spot from 2013 is The Conjuring from James Wan. James Wan is an amazing director. A couple of my favorites besides The Conjuring are Dead Silence and Death Sentence, which I think both of those are underrated, and I would definitely recommend both. But The Conjuring here is nothing new conceptually, but it's one of the best of its ilk in the exorcism possession genre. And it was set in the 70s. I think it was a great idea to set it in that time period too. And this is based off the case of Ed and Lorraine Warren, supposedly their scariest case ever. And I love the whole cast here. I think that was one of the things that really worked for this film. We've seen so many movies like this, but just from every technical aspect, it was near perfection. And the acting, the directing, the writing, the cinematography, just the look and feel of the house, the interior, the exterior, this farmhouse, the tree, so many different elements, just really creepy and atmospheric. That's one of the biggest things for all the technical aspects in other horror movies. They don't really stand up to The Conjuring. All the actors were great. You just really felt invested in this family and all the characters, and I think that really shows to how well the actors did in their roles. So if you like exorcism, possession movies, supernatural forces, hauntings, things like that, I would highly recommend The Conjuring, an all-time classic in that genre. And next up at my number 5 spot is 2016's The Void. This movie is uber creepy. It reminds me of Hellraiser meets John Carpenter's The Thing. The practical effects in here are amazing, really stand out. This is another one that has a lot of grays and blacks, really washed out hue, which again reflects the bleak tone, and it's super creepy and atmospheric. The majority of this film takes place at a hospital, and there's all these people in these creepy white hooded outfits, and just all this violent, terrifying things start happening, and just the look to some of the creatures in here, just still, I think about it, some of the scenes that happen, they really stay in your mind long after viewing. Those are some of the biggest selling points for this movie, just how creepy it is, the practical effects. I just feel that tension all throughout. Love all the effects there. I love that they went practical over CG. Just phenomenal film, and it had to be high on this list. Next up at the number 4 spot is 2017's Get Out from Jordan Peele. Mostly known for his work on Key and Peele and doing comedic stuff like that, Mad TV. He shows that he's an incredible writer and director. This is a really good horror movie with a societal message, playing different elements all throughout with comedic and dealing with race, all the different issues. He's a black man dating a white girl, and he goes to visit her family, and just all the different interactions that happen, just creepy things start going on. And I love how the movie plays out and unravels little by little. And the climax just was superb. This to me is an all-time horror movie classic right here, especially dealing with societal messages and racial issues and things like that. This is such a phenomenal directorial debut too. This is an all-time horror classic, but I think it's something that will work for people who aren't necessarily a fan of horror in general. If you're a fan of other genres, I think you can still appreciate this film. It's more working on the psychological elements than gore and things of that nature. And I think that's something that really makes it stand out. It's just great storytelling. Next up at the number 3 spot is 2016's The Wailing, a Korean horror movie. This one is so multi-layered, multifaceted, just an incredible film, great genre blend with crime, thriller, mystery, comedy, horror. It's a longer movie coming in at 157 minutes, and it is dramatically paced at times, but the journey is so worth it, as well as the climax. This is one of only 2 movies that after it ended, I had to literally sit there for a few minutes and think about it and try to figure out what happened and how it played out, and I absolutely love it. It's such a rewarding film, and I feel like the more that you watch this one, you pick up on little things all throughout. It's basically about how this stranger comes to this small village and very rural area, and all of a sudden there's people starting to get sick, and then they start becoming violent, and you dig deeper and deeper into it, and things start to unravel, and there's a police officer at the center of this, and his young daughter is starting to get sick, and he has to figure out how to save her. and then you find out the mystery of that stranger too. I love the evolution of certain characters and just the different layers. Just beautiful cinematography here too, great storytelling, just a really unique film. Definitely stands out, and I would highly recommend the heck out of this. But again, you have to be somebody that's into a dramatically paced horror movie. Again, I think the journey is so worth it. The characters, the storytelling, and again, the payoff is just awesome and creepy. And it does have the underlying feeling of tension all throughout. And my number 2 spot is 2010's Bedeviled, another Korean horror movie. This one has become one of my all-time favorite movies. I've rewatched it a bunch. Oh man, I really feel for the lead character here. It's basically about this woman going to this island where she lived at when she was a young girl, and she sees her best friend there, and how this woman is being abused mentally, physically, sexually, just beaten down, and essentially it's a revenge tale. And you get to know these characters and really sympathize for them too. And you get invested, and you kind of want to see the payoff and see the revenge play out. And this again is dramatically paced at times, but oh my gosh, the climax is so worth it. Some really good gore effects towards the end of the movie. It's gritty, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's raw, bloody at times, especially at the ending. I love this movie so much. I never hear anybody talk about it, and I can't recommend it enough. Such an amazing film. This is one of the best examples of Korean horror and great revenge horror as well. And in my number 1 spot from 2018, can you guess what it is? If you guessed Hereditary, you're right. This movie is one of the creepiest movies, not just of recent years, but ever. Wow, this is one that is just so haunting, so creepy, so atmospheric. So well written, so well acted. I think Toni Collette deserved an Oscar for her performance here. One of the best performances in a horror movie, hands down. She was so great as the mother right there. And basically it's about the grandmother of this family. After she passes away, they start having these weird things happening. She finds out that she was involved with the cult. And not since Hitchcock's Psycho have I been so surprised by following this one character and then what happens and everything that happens after that. It just really had me shocked by that moment. And then Paimon, super creepy with the cult, and just so many bizarre things that happen throughout this movie. It just escalates throughout. It gets creepier and more bizarre. And this is a film that deals with cults, mental illness, and again, if you pay attention to the details, you'll pick up on a lot of things there, and especially how it plays out. It explains so much. And I have one criticism for this movie, and that's the ending, and I'm just being really picky here. I don't like it when the audience is spoon-fed. I like some ambiguity, and I think this one kind of went out of the way to explain certain things at the very end, and I feel like that wasn't necessary, and I would have preferred the ambiguity aspect to it, but I still think it works overall, and it's a horror masterpiece. One of the best movies I've seen in years as well. This one has also become one of my favorite movies. So intricate all throughout, from the models all throughout the movie, the model houses and pieces like that, and just all of the characters here. The young girl playing Charlie, just the bird, just so many, the pole, what happens with the cult. Again, Paimon, just so many scenes. Toni Collette at the end on the attic door, just, it just goes on and on and on with how many things that you can remember about this and that stand out. And a phenomenal directorial debut here from Ari Aster. Just legendary debut, just dripping with atmosphere, so creepy. I feel like a lot of the movies here, I say the same thing, but it's true for all of them. Again, it has washed out hues, lots of grays, lots of blacks, which reflect the bleak tone, creepy, atmospheric, well acted, well written, well directed. This to me, again, not just a horror masterpiece, but a cinematic masterpiece on every level, genre defining, absolutely hands down the number 1 horror movie of the 2010s, Hereditary. So there you go. Those are my top 10 horror movies of the 2010s. A decade of horror, 10 years, 2010 to 2019. Let me know what you think of my choices. Which was your favorite from this list? And what horror movies would be on your list for the top 10 horror movies of the 2010s? Leave me those comments down below. And I hope everybody's doing well. Take care.